folks, it's your girl, Lexi Mahari, and I am back with another episode of Buzzworthy Chit Chat, where I like to share my opinion on the latest pop culture news, current events, and more. Before we dive in, please take a moment to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so that you can receive notice each time I upload a video. So we are reviewing the episode Can't Get Right of Porsha's Family Matters. This was the final episode. And I have to ask you, did you get what you needed out of this final episode of the show? The short answer for me is not really. There were a couple of emotions that this final episode elicited for me, and that was the fact that it was cringeworthy in multiple areas. I felt a sense of relief that it was over. And then I felt a little bit of sadness for the child, for whom, we as everyday people know that this is a reality for many kids everywhere who are dealing with parents who are looking for ways to co-parent. But it was unfortunate that, for me, these two could not reach some sort of an amicable agreement for how they would move forward. So let's start by talking a little bit about some of the cringeworthy moments on this episode for me. And of course, it kicked off within the first 5 minutes in which Dennis was dropping off Pilar from a bit of visitation with him. And Porsha, went to invite him in. And, I felt like Dennis smartly declined to not go into that house, because I felt like everything that happened on that Mexico trip, I would never feel comfortable coming back in your house after the way things went down, whether I perceived you to have attempted to attack my mother, the fact that you allegedly tried to have me arrested after all of that, all of those things. There's no way that I'd want to step inside. I would have been like him, dropping off my daughter, giving her, her hug or kiss and saying, see you next time. So there was that cringeworthy moment. Now, Porsha acknowledged that Dennis, supposedly apologized for how things transpired in Mexico, but there was no apology on her part whatsoever for, quote, blacking out and, in my opinion, escalating the situation to a space that it really didn't have to go. So that was unfortunate, I thought, and she seemed to be proud of the fact that there was no layer of apology from her. The next cringeworthy moment that I think we bumped into on this show was Porsha's lunch with her cousin Londi, who was, clearly, I think she struggled to share her perspective with Porsha about how she felt Porsha treated her. And we have to remember that Londi is apparently, a bit younger than Porsha. She may present herself as more mature, but she's clearly younger than Porsha. And so as she was explaining, what had transpired at the tequila tasting and how it made her feel, and the fact that, I guess Porsha had allegedly had Dennis fire her, and then, Porsha fired her as her assistant. It was an interesting exchange of words and emotions. And clearly Porsha really didn't want to have to hear about Londi being made aware of the fact that she had played a role in her termination in working with Dennis. And I didn't understand that. I don't know if Porsha truly wanted to portray herself as this perfect being on television, but honestly, she could have just kind of been like, yeah, I did that, sorry, I did that, and this is the reason why I did that. I'm sorry that it made you feel this way. But in that moment, here's why I decided to do that. But she clearly she said she didn't do it, but I don't know that that was believable. And unfortunately, for Porsha, we know that there have been some moments in which she may not have been as transparent as she could have been. If we go back to the RHOA days. So watching this exchange, I'm not so sure that Porsha had no role in her cousin's firing. Now, she was honest about, why she fired her as her personal assistant. And that was good. It was like, okay, here we go. You said that you fired her because she seemed overwhelmed, that she destroyed your Chanel bag with some baby oil. So good for you. That was a truthful moment. So I just kind of questioned the Dennis thing. And, she felt that her cousin should have been loyal to her or believed that she didn't do it. Maybe, but, clearly it seemed as though it did happen. And Porsha got so upset that she went offset to production, and you could hear her screaming in the background. That part of the show seemed to have been edited, so I couldn't fully understand everything she was saying, but clearly she was upset that this was going to make air, that her cousin was accusing her of, some things that maybe were not in the best light for her, and including her not spending enough time with her, or spending the time that she would have felt she should have spent, she being Londi, feeling that Porsha should have spent with her. And production, I guess, had to encourage her to go back to set, and then she came back to set and was apologizing to her cousin, who was in tears. She clearly was bawling about the whole thing and regretful that she had even brought it up. So that was unfortunate, because again, it seems as though Porsha, again, she was portrayed this way. If we're watching the show, she is being portrayed as not wanting to bring these issues to light, or at least to the eye of the public. And again, that was a perfect reality moment. If she didn't have time for her cousin, she didn't have time for her cousin. And that flashback for 8 years ago, in which she was, talking to her mother about the divorce that was, happening with Cordell at the time, showed that she didn't have time for all of that. She was on reality television, she was divorcing Cordell. Fast forward a few years later, Porsha has definitely had things going on in her career. She's done a couple of movies, I think. She was doing a play. She did the play at one point. She had Dish Nation. I mean, she was a busy person. So it would have been fair for her to just say, you're right, I was busy. I was really focused on my career. After I had my daughter, I became really focused on her. So she kind of missed the moment to, justify everything without looking the way she did last night. So again, I don't know if production did that to her. I can only base it on, the way she was portrayed to us on the television, and that she missed an opportunity to own her stuff. Moving on to the next cringeworthy moment, Simon's divorce. The notification that, his divorce was final kind of made me cringe, because it just kind of reminded us, unfortunately, of how they got together, the sketchiness of the timeline, and the fact that this marriage ended under questionable circumstances. So that was just cringeworthy to me, and that's all I have to say about it. The next cringeworthy moment was Simon talking to Aunt Liz about how the family is treating Porsha. I thought that was interesting, because if if we pay attention to what we saw this season, I don't think they really were mistreating her. If anything, they seemed to be trying to appease her on multiple levels, and seemed very uncomfortable when they didn't fall in line with what was she wanted, or what her expectations were. So that was cringeworthy for me, that he was speaking to his elder. He may be old, but she's still older than him, Aunt Liz, that is. So that was cringeworthy, that he was telling an elder that they needed to, in so many words, treat Porsha better. That was a head scratcher for me. Now let's come to the climactic ending of this series, or at least this season, of Porsha Family Matters. The final, cringeworthy moment, and that being when Porsha and Dennis sat down together 4 months later, right? We see on the show, they're telling us this is 4 months later. So we're talking, this is 4 months after Porsha and Simon potentially have signed, for their home. I don't know that these were closing papers. Buying a home is a very extensive process. So I don't know exactly where they were, with buying the home. I might have missed that tidbit as I was watching the show. But either way, they were signing papers. Let's say they had an address, so they knew where they were going, or where they wanted to go, and the potential timeline for getting there. So fast forward 4 months, we have Porsha and Dennis sitting down together for a dinner. Apparently to, I guess, discuss Pilar, is the way it came across. And Porsha, I guess, tells him about moving. And before I even get there, I think before they got to that part of it, you could see that it was a very tense situation when they were sitting down together. And maybe, I don't know. Anyway, it just looked really tense when they sat down together in the first place. he made a comment about the fur vest she had on, and she made it a point to say that Simon bought it for her. It was a very unnecessary exchange that clearly was happening about, yes, we know you're engaged to Simon. We know you guys are buying a house. And it was like she took that moment, I guess, to rub his nose in it. And it was as if she took that moment to rub his nose in it. Next, we have another moment where I think this is where the moving into the home comes up. And so Dennis is questioning, where it's going to be, which is interesting to me that, again, if we're paying attention to the timeline, this is 4 months later. So are we saying that Dennis had no idea at that point? Which, yes, the answer is yes. He had no idea where they were moving in the Atlanta metro area. That is crazy because he is the father of the child. So why she wouldn't have said to him something after all this time about them moving and where is head scratching as well. Now, I think I get from Porsha, I'm going to play devil's advocate. From Porsha's standpoint, I probably wouldn't want to say exactly where I'm going to be moving on national television. So that's where I still come back and say, okay, I get you probably didn't want to put your business out on national television, but you could have told him by now that you guys were settling on a home. Now, there were some interesting nonverbal cues happening between Dennis and Porsha, and some things that they were saying at each other. If you watched the original spinoff for Porsha and Dennis, then you know that she and Dennis were going to buy a home together when, they were planning to get married at one point. And Dennis wanted to live closer to the city. He wanted to live closer to, the action and his businesses and such. And Porsha did not. She wanted to stay on the outskirts. So clearly, I don't know if Porsha was trying to just twist the knife to say, hey, yeah, we're moving in closer. I don't think she bought a home, obviously, closer to the city just to get at Dennis, but she was definitely twisting the knife in that moment about them, buying this home closer into the city. So there's that going on. Now, what also stood out, aside from this home situation, is schooling. So she mentioned that, she was looking for a school for Pilar, and clearly Dennis, was not in the loop about that. And so he was, upset, understandably so. And I think he seems to be the kind of dad who wants to be involved in his child's life, or the kind of father who wants to be involved in his child's life. He comes across as a, quote, dad. And, to his credit, if Porsha was not including him on this decision of what schools, they're going to have Pilar attend, that is a problem, right? That is a part of co-parenting, that you both have to come to a decision as it relates to, what school she attends. And if they are truly co-parenting and there comes a point where, maybe Dennis has to pick her up, or Dennis is going to be attending events, he has a right to know where that's going to be early on. Additionally, if you're just looking at the quality of education and such, he may have some input into what that should look like. And if we flip the script, if people are saying, well, he doesn't necessarily need to be involved in that decision. If we flip the script and say Dennis was doing this, we'd feel the same way. We'd say, hey, Porsha should be a part of that decision. So that was a little concerning as well. So I'm checking my notes here about what else I wanted to say about this dinner, because there were all kinds of little things. I felt like as Dennis and Porsha were talking, he was giving her some tests and she was failing. She was very, her attitude was just, it was tense, like I said. And she was really tossing blame on Dennis and his mother for the failure of them to all come to this agreement for how to blend the family. She talked about how all these things that she had wanted and what she wanted to see transpire. But there was really no, it wasn't a two-way conversation. It was about her. And it reminded me of a few seasons ago when she was trying to drop that baby agreement with the other guy she was dating, if you remember that, when she wanted to have a baby with him and she wanted to have this baby agreement. So it was going to be Porsha's way. And it was like, no, sis, it can't be that way. This is, that's not co parenting, as you're watching things transpire between her and Dennis. And so I felt like he was throwing some tests at her. She was failing miserably. And then when she tried to dump all the blame on him and his mother for them not reaching this place, and how she had to accept, that he was just going to be her father, and Pilar's father, and that was it. Um, you could kind of see where this was going. It was deteriorating rapidly. So, as we kind of come towards the end of this conversation, Dennis makes it known that he is, he's got his papers out there. He has filed the papers, and Porsha should also be aware of them by now. And that's when Porsha, basically starts to accuse him of taking it to a place where it didn't need to be, and that she didn't, wasn't looking for that type of battle, that she felt like they could have settled this outside of the court system. But I have to agree with Dennis on this one. And I think if it were me as a female and that was my child, and, my former significant other is now getting married, I think he's right to get something more formal in place to ensure that if he truly wants to remain a part of his daughter's life, that is going to be the case for him. And it shows he's a smart businessman too. This is the business of co-parenting in so many words. And I don't know that he was doing this to get her or to get at her. I think he was doing this because her behaviors are showing, and her words are showing him that she could easily cut him out as she forms this new life with Simon. So I say hats off to Dennis. He alluded to her having threatened him with some papers. She said she didn't mean it that way. I don't know if she meant it that way. We obviously did not see that conversation. So it's hard to know if she meant it as that she was filing some legal papers, or if she truly was only talking about drawing up a calendar for a visitation schedule. But her attitude at that table led me to feel like, Dennis, I would have gotten something a little more formal, something through a legal team that guaranteed my ability to parent my child 50% of the time. And he's right. If they're going out of country, if they're going on trips, whatever is happening that he's not going to be aware of because he's not in the home, he does have a right to know about that. So, I know it's hard. I know there's people, that may listen to this and disagree because Porsha is the mother, but I'm with Dennis. I stand with Dennis because he does need to take steps to remain active in his child's life. And I would say the same if it were Porsha. Again, and Dennis was the one who was in this situation. She should do the same thing. If she should have tried to put in the same type of protection for her relationship with Pilar. What do you guys think? How did you feel about this season? Do you think there should be a season 2? I don't know if it's canceled. I've been scouring the internet to see if they've truly canceled it, but I haven't really come across anything that says there won't be a season 2. I hope there won't be a season 2. I honestly think that this storyline and any future storyline around this could be folded into the Real Housewives of Atlanta. I don't think this needs to be an ongoing series for Porsha. I think I was watching another YouTuber. I can't recall who said it, but she was talking about how, honestly, Porsha was poised to be like the lead housewife. And she was. I think she was poised to be the center peach on RHOA, especially with this storyline as it unfolded. If production could have gotten her stuff together and just started filming RHOA, given the direction that this show went, this would have been an awesome storyline for her. It would have held our attention. And I think even in moving forward, if they decide to do this, it should be rolled into RHOA. Clearly she is not in a place where she being Porsha, where she wants her family business out like that. She doesn't want to be shown in a bad light in which she's not engaged with her family, or that she is mistreating anyone, or that her family has any degree of flaws. So if that is the case, she should probably just stick with RHOA, and that way the presentation of her storyline is a little smaller, but just enough to still, leave her as the star of the show. I mean, I really think she would have been poised to be the center peach with an awesome storyline. I think she chose not to do it because She didn't want to deal with the scrutiny of the cast, the crazy comments. She didn't want them to potentially taint her relationship any further than it already is at this point. And I think that's understandable if we look at what happened with the Bolo situation. I mean, this would have been really bad, for her, I imagine, psychologically. But I still think it probably would have done well on the RHOA series. So share your thoughts. Leave your comments in the chats. I do read them. I know there's only a few right now, but I do appreciate those of you who are dropping comments in the chat. Share your thoughts about, again, whether or not you think there should be a season 2, what you thought of the season finale, and I'll catch you in the next episode.